Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Broxtowe series, 10 parishes with an industrial past running along the western fringe of Nottinghamshire. Where are we today, viewers? Hello folks, it's been a while, but here we are in the borough of Broxtowe for the penultimate time. Welcome to a town that's the birthplace of a famous author. It's got a lot of mining history and there's plenty of other little bits and bobs that we need to cover as we take a walk around the town of Eastwood. Eastwood, East Clearing. With just 2 left to go in Broxtowe, today we come to the third and final town in the district, Eastwood. Lying 8 miles northwest of Nottingham and considered part of that city's urban area, Eastwood expanded rapidly during the Industrial Revolution and was based mainly on coal mining. At the height of its production in 1963, Moor Green Colliery alone produced 1 million tonnes of coal, but the last of the mines in the area closed in 1985. The remnants of that industry are a little limited, but if you know where to go, the heritage of the town can clearly be seen. Eastwood's coal, metal castings, rope, wire and agricultural products made valuable contributions to both of Britain's war efforts in the early 20th century. It's famous for a few other things too though. For starters, the Midland Railway was formed here in a meeting at the Sun Inn, after which the line from Pinxton to Leicester was constructed, and Eastwood itself also later gained a station. The novelist D.H. Lawrence was born here as well. Eastwood was the inspiration for many of his works. Although the local area is mentioned in many of his novels, it's especially featured in The White Peacock against a backdrop of industrialisation. That's because there were no fewer than 10 coal mines within easy walking distance of his home, and the overwhelming majority of the local male population were colliers. There's lots to cover here, so let's cut the chatter and let's go. Our route starts at the foot of a hill on Derby Road in the westernmost fringes of the town. The current Derby Road replaced an old route some years ago, and it's on that we find our first landmark. Eastwood has 6 churches all dotted around the town. This is one of them. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The other 5 include a Roman Catholic church on Nottingham Road, a Baptist church on Percy Street, and the main Anglican building towards the end of this route, which by the way totalled almost 10 kilometres. Eastwood is not a small village, that's for sure. Now to climb a hill alongside the church up Coppice Drive and towards Hall Park. Most of Eastwood's secondary school age children attend this Hall Park Academy, which also has its own 6th form. When it opened in 1957, this was known as Eastwood Hall Park Secondary, a technical grammar school. With the coming of comprehensive education, it later became Eastwood Comprehensive, before being converted to an academy in 2014 and renamed Hall Park. The school is sponsored by the Red Hill Academy Trust, however Hall Park continues to coordinate with Nottinghamshire County Council for admissions. Some of its most notable alumni are the cricketer Samit Patel, footballers Stuart Bohm, Alan Buckley and Tony Woodcock, and 2 musicians, Matt Cutler and Paul K. Joyce. Cutler is better known by his mononym, Lone, whilst Joyce was the school's head boy in 1975. He's the man who wrote the UK #1 song Can We Fix It for Bob the Builder. You're all going to be singing that in your heads now, aren't you? Eastwood is a hilly place. We're off downhill here and through a smaller park towards our next landmark. This town was the birthplace of the author David Herbert Lawrence, and the next building is related to him. This was the Durban House Heritage Centre until recently. It's now the head office of bike company Raleigh, a name I'm sure all the cyclists out there will know. Prior to 2016, Broxtowe Borough Council supported this building as almost like a museum, focused mainly on D.H. Lawrence. It also contained other exhibitions though, about the social history of Eastwood during the time in which he lived here. It included information on the educational system, coal mining, the local public transport, and the growth and expansion of Eastwood as a town during the Industrial Revolution. Broxtowe decided that their money was better put to use by merging this with the D.H. Lawrence Birthplace Museum, which we'll come to shortly. Now, from this building, you can get to Eastwood Hall very easily. It's over there, just off the road towards Brinsley. Now, Eastwood Hall is a private property, and I won't be able to film anything up there, but what I can do is tell you a bit about Eastwood Hall by way of some pictures. Eastwood Hall is arguably the most important building in the town. Its association with the mining industry is well documented, but the hall has been here long before any pits were sunk. The house was built in 1810 for the Plumptree family, who owned Plumptree Colliery just to the north. Although it's not known for sure, it may have originally been built as a hunting lodge, but became a residence when Sir Thomas Reresby converted it into a dwelling. It was then purchased by George Walker in around 1830 as the family home. The Barber and Walker Company owned and ran many collieries in the Eastwood area. The house was eventually acquired by the company in 1916 and converted to their head office. The business partnership between the Barber and Walker families started in 1787, and it remained strong until the nationalisation of the coal industry just after World War II. When that happened, the new National Coal Board acquired the hall as their area office, and it later became their headquarters. Among other things, this served as the crisis meeting location during the national miners' strike of the 1980s. It also had a few other uses. Most notably, during World War I, Eastwood Hall was in use for a few years as a convalescent home for Belgian soldiers recovering from injuries. Today, it's a hotel and conference centre. Now we're following Green Hills Road. In recent years, tourism has become increasingly important to Eastwood. If you walk along here, you'll be following a blue line painted on the pavement. Known as the Blue Line Trail, it takes you around 11 sites of local interest, including 3 of D.H. Lawrence's homes. This was one of them. This is the Breach House at 28 Garden Road. This should be well known to all readers of D.H. Lawrence because it's the setting for the bottoms in his work Sons and Lovers. The Lawrence family moved here from Victoria Street in 1887 and stayed for 4 years until 1891. Lawrence himself later recalled that it was a little less common to live in the Breach. The Breach House is open from April to October on the first Saturday of every month from 11 AM to 3 PM. That gives you the opportunity to look around this beautiful, historic house accompanied by a knowledgeable guide. D.H. Lawrence's books are sold here too. The Breach House is free to visit, but donations towards its upkeep are always welcomed. Back to the Blue Line now, we're off towards the centre of town next, but before we get there, we've got to pass through an area of housing which is quite notable for a few reasons. These are the Buildings, a housing estate consisting of some 300 terraced miners' cottages built in the 1860s. They remained, by and large, unchanged until the 1970s, inhabited by local miners and their descendants. After the nationalisation of the coal mines in the 1940s, the Coal Board took over most of these dwellings. Although solidly built, they lacked basic amenities, and their tight layout around a series of squares was considered unacceptable by modern standards. In the 1970s, therefore, this area was earmarked for clearance. Some have been demolished, but not all. The remaining houses were saved thanks to the creation of Broxtowe Borough Council in 1974, who took over from the old Eastwood Urban District Council. The new councillors toured Eastwood to get a first-hand impression of the buildings and, above all, the wishes of the local residents. 63% of them indicated their preference to stay in their current homes rather than move away to new ones. So instead of pulling them down, they were improved in a scheme that was later to win recognition as one of the best of its kind in Europe. Through this maze of terrace streets we go next to find the D.H. Lawrence Birthplace Museum. The museum is the house in which the writer was born in 1885. Visitors can explore this via either a guided or a self-guided tour, and to enter you have to use the museum's shop, which occupies the house next door. The museum has been laid out in the style of a late 19th century working-class miner's house, with the furniture being mostly from the family of the woman who founded it, Enid Goodband, its first curator. It has a few original items from Lawrence's family. The artefacts are as close to the 1880s as possible, and from Nottinghamshire, to make the contents as authentic as possible for the period. There's a small exhibition of Lawrence's early original watercolour paintings and photocopies of his later ones. A recent addition to the collection is Lawrence's original gravestone, which has been on display since the 11th of September 2009, the anniversary of his birthday. Over the road is the White Peacock Coffee Shop, named after Lawrence's first novel, published in 1911. Now, Lawrence often took real-life places and turned them into fictional settings in his work. The White Peacock is set in a fictional place called Nethermere, but in actuality, it was Eastwood. At the western end of Eastwood is a gyratory system consisting of an ancient crossroads now converted into a traffic island which encircles the Sun Inn public house, built in 1705. Now, even though Eastwood has plenty of pubs, there are few which could be considered more historically important than this. In 1832, a historic meeting took place at the Sun, which resulted in the creation of the Midland Counties Railway and the construction of a line from Pinxton to Leicester. Its purpose was simple: to transport coal. Its cost was met by capital contributions of various interested parties. Coal was literally fueling the Industrial Revolution, meaning mining communities like Eastwood were growing very quickly, and the railway was needed to facilitate its movement from the pits to where it would be sold. The meeting of the railway moguls in Eastwood was a vital part of the UK's industrial past. Okay, so I've just taken a pew on a bench just outside the Sun Inn for a moment. We are about a quarter of a way around the town of Eastwood now. We're hitting the town centre now though, and the landmarks are going to come at you thick and fast. Although the coal boom ended during Lawrence's childhood, Eastwood continued to expand. Nottingham Road and its feeder streets became established as shopping areas. Even though there are some out-of-town retail parks now, like Giltbrook for example, Nottingham Road remains a busy thoroughfare, lined with all sorts of shops and facilities. Of course, there are pubs, including this, the Lady Chatterley. Originally a Victorian house that later became a car sales showroom, this was opened as a pub by J.D. Wetherspoon in 2014. It's named after D.H. Lawrence's most well-known and most controversial novel, Lady Chatterley's Lover, first published in 1928, albeit privately. To create the characters in the book, Lawrence borrowed the name of a local colliery agent, George Chatterley, who lived a few doors away and served as mayor of Eastwood during the final stages of World War I. The book soon became notorious for its story of the physical and emotional relationship between a working-class man and an upper-class woman, so notorious in fact that it was the subject of a watershed obscenity trial against its publisher, Penguin Books, in the 1960s. It was banned for obscenity in Canada, Australia, India and Japan, although it did enter the public domain in the States earlier this year, after being banned there too. A few more shops and a tidy square next as we make towards a community hall just off this main street. This is the Dora Phillips Hall on Wood Street, which was built sometime before the 1970s. It's alternatively known as the Eastwood's Girls' Centre, simply because it's a place for the town's female population to meet. Now that's not to say males aren't allowed, other groups and societies do use this too. Now to swing back to Nottingham Road again via a couple of side streets and an old bakehouse as we make for the library. The library sits in a square which is centred around a clock erected for the turn of the new millennium in the year 2000. The post next to it has a representation of a phoenix on the top, the mythical bird which can be seen on the town's coat of arms. It's often associated with Lawrence too, who took it on as his own. The library itself is considered by many to be the absolute dead centre of town. It opened in 1975 and includes an extensive collection of books by and about D.H. Lawrence, surprisingly. Also on view here is the desk that the man himself once used. On an exterior wall of the library is Neil Andrews' 1989 relief sculpture entitled D.H. Lawrence 1885 to 1930. It shows, among other things, a naked couple embracing, with miners working underneath, and headstocks and a church in the background. Next, it's some more shops as we continue eastwards towards the War Memorial at the junction of Nottingham Road and Plumptree Way. The War Memorial was designed by a local company, Holbrook & Co, and built jointly by the Council and local tradesmen. It was unveiled in 1921, inscribed "To the men of Eastwood who fell in the Great War 1914 to 1918. Later, World War II's dedications were added. It takes the form of an obelisk made of Italian marble with a base of Wattston Wells stone. Behind it are two brick pillars with tablets on each. It was originally sited on a plot of land near the Cemetery Chapel off Church Street, approximately 1 kilometre away, but it was moved to its present more prominent location in 1978. A few yards further is the fire station, which provides fire cover to Eastwood and the surrounding areas. The station is shared with the East Midlands Ambulance Service. This one is staffed by on-call firefighters who respond from home or another place of work whenever required. Since 2018, the station's crews have attended almost 1,000 call-outs. Onward again towards a Tesco Express store as we skirt the northern edge of Coronation Park. We're heading for a second memorial, the Cadets Cross. The Eastwood Cadet Corps Institute was established in 1901 to provide social and educational facilities for youths aged between 16 and 31. The organisation eventually became the Eastwood Ambulance Training Corps. As the Cadet Corps, a number of its members and ex-members served during World War I. This garden and the memorial within it commemorate 7 of them, including 2 men who died after the armistice in 1918. The memorial cross was erected in 1927. Inscribed on the wall are the words, "So they passed over and all the trumpets sounded for them on the other side." On Edward Road we have another church, this time the National Spiritualist Centre. With not much more of note on here, it's generally all housing, I turned around to make my way to another pub, and one with another association with that famous writer that we keep talking about. This is the Three Tuns, which was D.H. Lawrence's father's favourite, a place which he would frequent after working at Brinsley Colliery. It featured in the novel Sons and Lovers, but in true Lawrence fashion, he changed the name of it. In the book, this is called the Moon and Stars. The Lawrence family once lived in this part of Eastwood, at number 97 Lincroft Road. As for the Three Tuns, it remains a fine traditional pub today, open plan and with a central bar. It's effectively divided up into a number of spacious rooms and has a large garden at the rear. After passing through a small passageway that runs alongside the pub, we're on Percy Street, outside Eastwood Baptist Church. This was founded after members of a sister church in Newthorpe had been holding services there for some time. Eastwood obtained its chapel in 1876, and both remain active churches today. And at the end of the road is Lawrence View School. I don't need to elaborate on how this gets its name, of course. Next to this school is a massive area known as the Canyons, which Lawrence once termed the best playground one could have as a kid growing up. Okay, so now we're going to head towards a church, but it's a long, long, long way away. It's right on Eastwood's eastern boundary. And to get to that, we've got to go through a whole plethora of side streets and residential areas. So I hope you're ready for a big, long montage. After climbing the ridiculously steep Mill Road, we find ourselves outside an old school that's just over the parish boundary with Greasley, but it's important. This is part of the former Beauvale board school, the one which D.H. Lawrence attended as a young boy. Lawrence attended between 1891 and 98 and became the first local pupil to win a county council scholarship to Nottingham High School. The school was later renamed in Lawrence's honour. Today, it's used by the Katie Wright School of Dance. The boys' section of the old school occupies one side of Mill Road. On the other side of Mill Road is the former Beauvale Primitive Methodist Chapel, built in 1889. In 1940, it provided 200 sittings in pews, and there was a school hall and 6 other rooms. It was later closed as a Methodist place of worship, but it's still in use, being occupied by Shekinah Ministries today. I feel like I should give an honorary mention to the Greasley Sports and Community Centre complex over the road. This is all technically in Greasley and not Eastwood, but the line between the two is a bit blurry in this part of town. We'll be meeting this again in Broxtowe's final episode. And right on the border between Eastwood and Greasley is another building that further cements the mining heritage of this place. The Greasley Miners' Welfare Social Club was established in the 1920s, and it's still a gathering place for social activities and entertainment for its members. They have a junior football team and a bowls team, as well as regular bingo and quiz nights. Musicians from around the country often appear here on Saturday evenings. Let's cross back into Eastwood then as we make for Nottingham Road. We're off to find a church and a pair of pubs next, but one of them is no longer pulling pints. The church in question is Our Lady of Good Counsel. This is a Roman Catholic church, a simple red brick Gothic affair dating from the 19th century, which occupies a prominent position in the townscape. Amongst its furnishings is a medieval altar slab from the long-gone Beauvale Priory. Founded in 1343 by Nicholas de Cantilupe, it was one of 9 Carthusian English houses. Its monks' rules were similar to those of the Benedictine order. The monastery was suppressed in 1539, but it lives on in literature, thanks to D.H. Lawrence. It features in The White Peacock, where he refers to it as the Abbey. The Roman Catholics have a school in these parts too, literally just around the corner, but next for us it's a pair of pubs. One of them occupies the corner of nearby Castle Street, and as such it's named the Greasley Castle. As for the other one, well, you'd be a little hard pushed to find it these days. This shop stands on the site of the other pub. It was called the Man in Space. Built in the 1960s, it has a little bit of film history because it appeared briefly in the 1971 film Carry On at Your Convenience. The 22nd film of the Carry On series, it was the first box office failure, which was attributed to its portrayal of political themes during the trade union movement, and it was followed by Carry On Matron in 1972. After the Man in Space closed, it was converted into a Sainsbury's local store, but since November 2020, it has been, and still is, a co-op. Now it's time to start making our way back towards the start. Derby Road seems like ages ago, but there's still plenty to cover in these final stretches. Next up, it's another school. This is the Florence Nightingale Academy, a primary school for children aged between 3 and 11, and it's a member of the White Hills Park Trust. Of all the things on the route, it was this that gave me the biggest headache when it came to research. As we know from our adventures in Amber Valley, Florence Nightingale lived in Lee, on the outskirts of Matlock. I could find no connection between her and Eastwood, so the name of this school is a bit of a mystery. Maybe you can help. Do you know why this school is named after her? Let me know in the comments below. Moving on, the town has its own community football club based within Coronation Park. Named Eastwood CFC, they were founded in 2014 and play in the United Counties League. They have the nickname the Red Badgers. The club was formed following the folding of the former Eastwood Town Football Club. Coronation Park was also the home ground for that now defunct team, who themselves were established back in 1955. During the 1970s, Eastwood Town competed in the Midland League, and in 1983 they were founder members of the current Northern Counties East Football League. In 2013, though, they were wound up over an unpaid tax bill and barred from using Coronation Park. Let's make our way through the rest of the park now towards Seymour Road, towards a type of church we've never seen before. This is the Church of Christ. There are very few of these in the UK. Originally established on the day of Pentecost in AD 33, the central guidance for these churches is provided by the Lord from heaven. The practices and teachings of each congregation are based solely on the Holy Scriptures. Next, it's another long walk through a housing estate, and once through this one, we'll be at Eastwood Cemetery. Eastwood Cemetery stretches between Chewton Street in the east and Church Street in the west, and you can walk through the entire thing using a paved footpath. It's worth, though, leaving that path and exploring it. There's a few Commonwealth war graves in here, 5 from World War I and 8 from World War II. At the centre of it all was a cemetery chapel, but that was reduced to little more than an empty shell in 2014 following a fire. At its height, 25 crew members were at the blaze and remained at the scene for more than 6 hours. A lot of people come to this cemetery to find one specific headstone, and this is it. This is the Lawrence family plot, where the writer's parents, Arthur and Lydia Lawrence, are interred. The headstone also mentions Lawrence's brother William, who tragically died of erysipelas in 1901 at the age of 23. The author himself is also included on this headstone, but he was buried in Vence, France, on the 4th of March, 1930. Adjoining the cemetery is a small park, and next we're off to Church Street. It's time to climb another huge hill to reach the highest point anywhere in the town, where St Mary's Church stands tall. St Mary's Church has an open evangelical style of worship. There's been a church on this site since 1250, and there are some remains of the original structure. The second church, built from local funds, was apparently a somewhat economical reconstruction and only lasted for about 90 years. As industrialisation progressed, it became clear that the church was far too small for the larger community, and a third, much grander building took its place again, following appeals for funds from the local people. The townsfolk were justifiably proud of what was built, as it included an impressive tower and clock, a stone nave, and a chancel with a number of stained glass windows. It lasted over 100 years before a fire destroyed much of the main body in 1963. The tower was saved, however, and in 1967 the church was rebuilt into what can be seen today, complete with the original tower. At the rear of the building is Plumptree Hall. Like the road of the same name near the War Memorial, it takes its name from the Plumptree family, who built Eastwood Hall. In much the same way as the Dora Phillips Hall on Wood Street, it's a community centre and acts as St Mary's Church Hall. Let's return to the road again, and we have just a handful of landmarks left before things should start to look rather familiar. Next to pass is the Old Wine Vaults, which claims to be the oldest pub in Eastwood, even though the Sun Inn was built first. It dates from 1779. A Grade 2 listed building, this is a friendly community pub with a beautiful, fully enclosed rear garden and a children's play area. It's operated by Admiral Taverns. Virtually next door is the Eastwood Conservative Club, another drinking establishment which can offer 2 full-size snooker tables and fast cask Marston's pedigree. Which all sounds good, but unfortunately, you have to be a member for this one. Okay, we're in familiar territory here because you can see behind me the Sun Inn, which we covered quite a long time ago now. I've been going for just over 2.5 hours, and it's been a really difficult walk this because of all the hills. You know, if it was flat, I'd probably have enjoyed this a lot more than I actually have. But to be fair, I've still got a smile on my face, so the hills can't have been that bad, can they? From this point, it's quite simple. We need to take a left turn at the Sun Inn, and that will take us back onto Derby Road. We'll pass some allotments, which I'm sure will please all the fans out there, and we'll hop in the car and finish it all off with a drive out towards a company that I know very, very well. Midway down Derby Road, here's the entrance to the allotments. I know, you can't see them due to the high hedge, but at least all the fans out there, and you know who you are, can remain happy for another episode. Right, it's time we went for a little drive. Northwest of the town centre and just off the A610 is a big industrial estate. Named Nottingham Business Park 26, this is full of warehouses, mostly pertaining to some well-known logistics companies. For example, Amazon are up here. So too, though, are Evri, the parcel delivery company, which I'm sure a lot of you have at least heard of, if not had deliveries from. They have depots all over the country, but this, their Nottingham version, is one of the newer ones. Evri started life nearly 50 years ago as a mail order company in Bradford. With a few name changes since, including ParcelNet, Hermes and latterly Evri, they are now the largest dedicated parcel delivery company in the UK, handling over 700 million a year. They have 14,000 parcel shops and an army of 20,000 couriers nationwide. Now, as much as I would like to sing their praises, as one of those 20,000 myself, I can't. I've been trying to leave them for the last 4 years to do this job full time. Maybe you can help. Be sure to give this video a share, a like and a subscribe, and hopefully I'll be gone before peak. Trust me, Christmas at Evri is like hell on earth. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.